The Golden Rule Harrison Reed's corner office overlooked Seattle's gleaming skyline, the morning light catching on glass towers that seemed to mirror his own pristine workspace. At 42, he had built Red Innovations into a technology empire through discipline, focus, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. "The candidate is waiting in the conference room, Mr. Reed," his interim assistant announced through the intercom. Harrison straightened his already immaculate tie. 3 minutes early? That's promising. The conference room held only one occupant, a woman in her late 20s wearing a simple navy pantsuit. Hair pulled back in a practical bun, face clean of any makeup. She stood as Harrison entered, her posture confident but not presumptuous. "Olivia Bennett," she said, extending her hand. Her handshake was firm, direct. Harrison gestured for her to sit. "Your resume is impressive. Stanford MBA, for years at Wellington Partners, exceptional references." "Thank you," Olivia replied, her voice steady. "I believe my experience aligns well with what you need in an executive assistant," perhaps Harrison said, studying her with analytical precision. "But qualifications are only part of the equation. If you've researched Red Innovations thoroughly, if you're focused on quantum computing, applications in healthcare is revolutionary, particularly your recent breakthrough in medical imaging." Harrison nodded slightly. "That you're aware of our workplace principles?" "Yes, efficiency, precision, and professionalism above all. No distractions." Specifically, Harrison continued, sliding a document across the polished table, this addendum. "To our standard employment contract, I require my direct staff to maintain a professional appearance that prioritizes function over form. No cosmetics, no elaborate hairstyles, no accessories beyond a watch and simple studs if ears are pierced. Clothing must be business appropriate, muted colors, nothing that draws attention." He watched for her reaction. This was usually where candidates became uncomfortable. Olivia scanned the document, her expression neutral. "I understand. Most find it unusual. It's consistent with your philosophy that work should be about substance, not style," she replied. "I have no issue with it." Harrison leaned back slightly. "May I ask why?" A small smile touched her lips. "Frankly, Mr. Reed, I need this job. My brother is starting college in the fall first in our family. The salary you're offering would ensure he graduates debt-free." She paused. "But beyond that, I've spent years in environments where appearance often overshadowed competence. The idea of being valued purely for my work is actually refreshing." What she didn't mention was her life before business school, the art studio in Brooklyn. Canvases splashed with color, her experiments with makeup as another form of expression. That Olivia seemed from another lifetime now. "You start Monday," Harrison said after a moment. "Jessica will email the full contract today." 2 weeks later, Harrison had almost forgotten what his office was like before Olivia Bennett. She anticipated needs before he voiced them, restructured his calendar for maximum efficiency, and somehow managed to be simultaneously present and invisible, exactly what he required. "The Peterson presentation is updated with the latest projections," Olivia said, placing a tablet on his desk. "I've rescheduled the board call to accommodate Mr. Zhao's time zone." Harrison reviewed her work, finding nothing to critique. "Good, that will be all." She turned to leave. Notice the single concession to individuality she permitted herself, a small silver watch with a worn leather band. Something about it seemed incongruous with her otherwise practical attire. "Family heirloom," she explained, catching his glance. "My father's, it keeps perfect time." Harrison nodded, unexpectedly intrigued by this small glimpse beneath the professional surface. "Very well," he said. "Carry on." Efficiency and elegance. 3 months into her position, Olivia had become the operational backbone of Harrison Reed's executive floor. Department heads who once approached Harrison directly now instinctively consulted with her first. Her desk outside his office functioned as a sophisticated filter, ensuring only truly essential matters reached him. "The Tokyo team sent over their revisions," Olivia said, placing a tablet on Harrison's desk one Tuesday morning. "I've highlighted the substantive changes and added notes on potential regulatory concerns in the margin." Harrison scrolled through her annotations, impressed as always by her thoroughness. "Your assessment of the patent implications is spot on. Legal missed this entirely." "I took a few intellectual property courses during my MBA," she replied, maintaining her characteristic professional distance. Would you like me to draft a response to Tokyo, or would you prefer to address it personally? Harrison considered for a moment. Draft it. I'll review before it goes out. Olivia nodded and turned to leave, her navy skirt and cream blouses. Understated as always, her father's watch the only personal touch. Harrison found himself watching her exit, struck by a realization in a company of over 2,000 employees. Olivia Bennett might be the only person he genuinely trusted. That evening, as the office emptied, Harrison emerged from a video call to find Olivia still at her desk, focused intently on her computer screen. "It's nearly 8, he remarked. She looked up, momentarily startled. "I'm finalizing the quarterly report synthesis. The board meeting is tomorrow. I'm aware of my own schedule," he said, though without the edge that typically accompanied such statements, of course. "I'll email it to you within the hour." Harrison paused, an unusual hesitation in his typically decisive manner. "Have you eaten?" The question seemed to surprise them both. "Had a protein bar around 4, she admitted. "There's a new sushi place on the 32nd floor. They stay open late for the investment teams." He checked his watch. "The report can wait until morning." "That's not necessary, Mr. Reed." "I don't mind, Olivia," he interrupted. "Even machines require maintenance. Dinner is a reasonable efficiency measure." 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other at a small table overlooking the city lights. Harrison noticed how the soft restaurant lighting changed the contours of Olivia's face, revealing a delicacy to her features he hadn't observed under the harsh office fluorescence. "Your brother, how is he adjusting to college?" Harrison asked. After they ordered, surprise flickered in her eyes. "Well, thank you. He's majoring in bioengineering. It's actually quite interested in the kind of work Reed Innovations does." "Smart family. Just determined," she replied. "Our parents died when I was 22 and he was 12. He didn't have much of a safety net." Harrison nodded, absorbing this new information about the woman who managed his daily life yet remained largely unknown to him, hence the watch. Her fingers unconsciously touched the worn leather band. Yes, their food arrived, temporarily shifting their attention. As they ate, Harrison found himself relaxing into a conversation that, for once, wasn't entirely about work. Olivia spoke about her brother's research interests with genuine animation, revealing a warmth that her professional demeanor usually concealed. The following morning, catastrophe struck in the form of a car accident involving Janine Porter Reed, Innovations head of public relations. Nothing life-threatening, but multiple fractures meant she would miss the Westfield Foundation Gala, the premier charity event of the year and a crucial networking opportunity with potential investors. Every executive in the company will be watching their direct reports step into Porter's role, Harrison said during the emergency meeting. "It's too high profile to delegate to a junior staff member." "What about Olivia?" suggested Marcus from finance. "She knows every aspect of the company's operations and can hold her own in any conversation." All eyes turned to Olivia, who sat taking notes, her expression neutral despite the unexpected spotlight. "I would need to prepare thoroughly," she said after a moment. "But if it helps the company, I can do it." Harrison frowned. "You're not in PR?" "Oh, but I've been handling your correspondence with the Westfield Foundation. I'm familiar with their priorities in the guest list." Later, alone in his office, Harrison signed off on the arrangement with lingering reservations. It was the logical solution, yet something about it unsettled him, a disruption to the ordered world he'd carefully constructed. "The gala is tomorrow night," he informed Olivia. "I'll send a car for you at 7. "Thank you, Mr. Reed," she replied, perfectly composed as always. "I won't let you down." An unveiled Truth the Westfield Foundation Gala transformed the Seattle Art Museum into a glittering showcase of wealth and influence. Harrison arrived precisely on time, exchanging practiced pleasantries with board members and potential investors. His mind, however, remained partially occupied with concerns about Olivia stepping into such a visible role. He had grown accustomed to her quiet competence behind the scenes tonight, represented an untested variable in his carefully controlled environment. "Harrison Reed," called out Josephine Westfield, the foundation's formidable chairwoman. "I was Just telling Senator Mitchell about your remarkable work with predictive healthcare algorithms. Harrison smoothly joined their conversation, discussing technical innovations in terms accessible to non-specialists, a skill he'd honed over years. Of such events, as he spoke, he periodically scanned the entrance, watching for Olivia's arrival when she finally appeared at the top of the grand staircase. Harrison's carefully constructed sentence dissolved mid-word. The woman descending the stairs bore Olivia's face, but everything else seemed transformed. Her dark hair, normally secured in a practical bun, now fell in soft waves past her shoulders. She wore a floor-length gown in deep emerald that moved like water with each step. The color brought out flecks of gold in her eyes that Harrison had never noticed before. Her features, always pleasant but unremarkable at the office, now displayed a harmonious elegance that commanded attention without seeking it. It wasn't that she wore excessive makeup or flashy jewelry. In fact, her only accessory remained her father's watch, now nestled against her wrist like a cherished artifact rather than a functional tool. The transformation was more fundamental, as though he was seeing the authentic version of someone who had been moving through his world in deliberate, soft focus. "I'm sorry," Harrison said to the senator. "Would you excuse me for a moment?" He intercepted Olivia at the bottom of the staircase, suddenly aware of his heartbeat in a way that felt foreign and vaguely alarming. "Mr. Reed?" She greeted him with a professional smile that somehow felt different in this context. "I've already spoken with 3 potential investors about the medical imaging project. Dr. Yamamoto from Tokyo University seems particularly interested." Harrison nodded mechanically. "You look ... he began, then stopped, sure how to complete the sentence without violating his own principles regarding workplace commentary on appearance. "Professional, but appropriate for the event," she supplied, a hint of tension in her voice. "I reviewed the photographs from last year's gala to gauge the expected standard." "Yes, of course." He cleared his throat. "The Westfield Foundation doubled their donation this year. Their support is crucial for the pediatric applications." "I know. Been coordinating with their grants committee." She met his gaze directly. "I may look different tonight, Mr. Reed, but I'm still doing my job." The subtle challenge in her voice caught him off guard. Had he expected otherwise? Throughout the evening, Harrison found himself repeatedly distracted by Olivia's presence across the room. She moved through conversations with graceful efficiency, her laugh occasionally carrying over the ambient noise, a sound he realized he'd never heard at the office. Several times he caught himself watching her longer than professionally appropriate, observing how she engaged with others in this setting, the animated expressions that crossed her face when she spoke about the company's innovations. Near midnight, they found themselves alone on the museum's terrace, the Seattle skyline creating a backdrop of scattered light against the dark water of Puget Sound. "You were concerned I wouldn't represent the company properly," Olivia said, breaking the silence. "It wasn't a question." Harrison turned to her. "I was wrong." She raised an eyebrow, the small gesture somehow more expressive in this context. "That's not a phrase I've heard you say before. It's not one I have frequent occasion to use." He offered a rare smile. "You handled Westfield and the senator masterfully. Even Zhao, who rarely engages with anyone below C-suite level. Thank you." Looked out at the city lights. "I understand why you create the boundaries you do, Mr. Reed. Business is cleaner without ... complications." "Is that why you accepted the appearance clause so readily? You share my philosophy?" Olivia was quiet for a moment. "Not exactly. Before business school, I was an artist, lived in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn, painted portraits, and could barely pay rent. After my parents died and I became responsible for my brother," she shrugged, "I made practical choices. Your rules just seemed like one more practical choice." Harrison absorbed this revelation, suddenly seeing her in yet another new light. "You were an artist?" "I still am. Sometimes, late at night. Small canvases now," she smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face again. "We all contain multitudes, Mr. Reed. Even you, I suspect." The string quartet inside began a new piece, the music drifting out onto the terrace. Without conscious decision, Harrison extended his hand. "Would you care to dance, Ms. Bennett?" Surprise flickered across her features, followed by a moment of hesitation. Then she placed her hand in his. "I would, Mr. Reed." As they moved together under the night sky, Harrison became acutely aware that something fundamental had shifted. A carefully constructed boundary had begun to dissolve. He wasn't entirely certain he wanted to rebuild it. Beyond appearances, Monday morning arrived with the harsh clarity of fluorescent lighting and the familiar hum of office electronics. Harrison stood at his window, coffee untouched, watching the early crowd of employees stream into the building below. His mind replayed fragments from Saturday night, Olivia's unexpected revelation about her artistic past, the weight of her hand in his during their dance, the complex emotion in her eyes when they parted at evening's end. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Reed, the executive team is assembled for the quarterly review." Harrison straightened his tie and gathered his tablet. Olivia was out at his office door. Olivia was at her desk, hair once again secured in its practical bun, wearing a charcoal pantsuit that matched dozens in her professional wardrobe. No trace remained of the woman from the gala, except perhaps a certain watchfulness in her eyes as she handed him the presentation materials. "Good morning, Mr. Reed. Ms. Bennett?" He accepted the folder, their fingers briefly touching. "The night went well. Yes, I've compiled the new commitments from investors. The Westfield Foundation is increasing their funding by 30%. Professional, efficient, as though the terrace conversation had never happened." Harrison found himself simultaneously relieved and oddly disappointed. "Good. We'll discuss the allocation this afternoon." The day progressed with its usual, ordered precision, yet Harrison found himself unusually distracted. Twice during meetings, he missed questions directed at him, something that had never happened in his professional career. Between appointments, his eyes drifted to Olivia's desk, observing small details he'd previously overlooked, the perfect posture she maintained even when no one was watching, the thoughtful pause before she answered the phone, the slight furrow in her brow when concentrating on complex documents. That evening, after most staff had departed, Harrison emerged from his office to find Olivia still at her desk, focused intently on her computer screen. "Another late night?" he asked. She looked up, just finalizing the Westfield grant paperwork. "Their legal team had some last-minute revisions." Harrison nodded, then found himself asking, "Your paintings, what subjects do you prefer?" Surprise flickered across her face at this personal inquiry. "People, mostly. There's an honesty in faces that interests me." She hesitated. "Why do you ask?" "Professional curiosity." He gestured vaguely, understanding team strengths. A small smile touched her lips, suggesting she recognized the flimsy pretext. Of course, uncomfortable silence settled between them, filled with unspoken questions. Harrison was unaccustomed to uncertainty, to the foreign territory of personal interest conflicting with professional boundaries he himself had established. "The Tokyo team reports a software integration issue," he said finally, retreating to familiar ground. "We should review it first thing tomorrow." "I'll schedule it," she replied, her expression carefully neutral once more. The following days established a new pattern outwardly. Their professional relationship continued unchanged, yet beneath the surface ran an undercurrent of awareness, of moments when their eyes held contact slightly longer than necessary, when conversations paused with words left unspoken. Then came Wednesday's crisis. A critical flaw was discovered in the medical imaging software one that could potentially delay the pediatric trials by months and jeopardize the Westfield funding. Harrison called an emergency meeting of the development team, watching their faces grow increasingly discouraged as they calculated the time needed to isolate and fix the problem. "We're looking at 6 weeks minimum," said Thomas, the lead developer, rubbing his tired eyes. "The rendering algorithm is too deeply integrated to extract cleanly." "Unacceptable," Harrison replied. "The Children's Hospital is expecting implementation next month." The team fell into technical discussions of potential workarounds, each option more complicated than the last. Harrison paced the conference room, frustration building. This was exactly why he maintained such rigid control, to prevent such failures. "What if you approached it differently?" Olivia's voice cut through the debate. She had been quietly taking notes in the corner, as was her usual role in technical meetings. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. The issue isn't the algorithm itself, but how it interprets input from the scanning hardware, she continued, rising to approach the whiteboard. My brother's research team faced a similar integration problem last semester. With unexpected confidence, she began sketching a diagram, explaining an alternative approach that would bypass the damaged code section entirely. The developers watched, with growing interest as her solution took shape, elegant in its simplicity, innovative in its approach. That might actually work, Thomas said finally. The excitement in his voice unmistakable. Harrison observed Olivia with newfound appreciation. As she answered technical questions with surprising expertise, this was yet another layer to her he hadn't suspected existed. Not just artistic sensitivity or business acumen, but genuine technical insight. Hours later, after the team had departed to implement her solution, Harrison found Olivia gathering her things to leave. How did you know that would work? He asked. She shrugged slightly. I listened during all your meetings, Mr. Reed, and I read the technical documentation to better understand the company's projects. Most assistants wouldn't bother. I'm not most assistants. For once, there was no deferential tone in her voice, just a simple statement of fact. Harrison stepped closer, the late hour and empty office removing some of the usual constraints. No, you're not. You're extraordinary, Olivia. The use of her first name hung in the air between them, a small but significant breach of his usual formality. Her eyes widened slightly, searching his face. Harrison, she replied softly, his name. On her lips an answered question. The distance between them seemed both vast and microscopic, filled with professional complications and personal possibilities. Harrison realized with sudden clarity that his carefully constructed rules about appearance had never really been about efficiency at all. They had been about maintaining emotional distance, about controlling variables that might disrupt his ordered existence. Yet here was Olivia Bennett disrupting everything while following every rule he'd established. Rewriting the rules, dawn broke over Seattle, painting the sky in watercolor hues that reminded Harrison of the artistic talent Olivia had described. He stood in his home office, coffee cooling on his desk, staring at the contract addendum he'd created years ago, the one stipulating the appearance guidelines that had defined his professional relationships. The document seemed smaller somehow, less significant than it once had. Perhaps because he now recognized it for what it truly was, not a tool for efficiency, but a shield against connection. Harrison arrived at the office earlier than usual, finding the executive floor still empty except for the cleaning staff. He used the quiet time to think, to plan his words carefully. When the elevator chimed at 7:30, he looked up to see Olivia stepping into the reception area, her expression registering surprise at finding him already present. Good morning, she said, setting down her bag. I didn't expect you until 9. Your calendar. I've been thinking about our employee guidelines, Rassin interrupted. The directness that served him well in business now applied to something more personal. Specifically, the appearance clause. Olivia's posture straightened almost imperceptibly. Is there an issue with my compliance? No. The issue is with the clause itself. He gestured toward his office. Would you join me for a moment? Inside, Harrison closed the door, something he rarely did during conversations with staff. The action itself seemed to change the atmosphere, creating a space where different rules might apply. The pediatric software is working, he began, momentarily retreating to safer territory. Thomas says your solution not only fixed the integration issue but improved the overall performance by 20%. I'm glad to hear it, Olivia replied, her professional mask firmly in place despite the unusual circumstances. The Children's Hospital will be pleased, Harrison nodded, then moved to the real purpose of this conversation. I created the appearance guidelines 7 years ago after a personal situation complicated a business relationship. It seemed logical to eliminate variables that might distract from work. Olivia remained silent, watching him with those perceptive eyes that now seemed to see far more than he'd previously allowed. What I've realized, he continued, is that true efficiency isn't about eliminating human connection, it's about finding the right connections. It's people who challenge you, complement your thinking, See solutions you miss. Mr. Reed Harrison, he corrected gently. At least in private conversations. A small smile touched her lips. Harrison, are you saying you want to change the company policy? I'm saying I want to change my perspective. He moved closer, the morning light casting soft shadows across the office. The gala showed me something important, Olivia. It's not just how you look in different circumstances, but how completely I had failed to see you. The artist, the problem solver. The woman who gave up her own dreams to support her brother. I made my choices, she said quietly. No regrets. But choices can evolve. People can evolve. He reached for her hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. I don't want an assistant who hides herself to meet arbitrary standards. I want a partner who brings her whole self to the table. Her eyes widened at the word partner, its meaning deliberately ambiguous. Are you offering me a promotion? She asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. I'm offering a possibility, Harrison replied, surprising himself with his openness. Professional? Personal? Perhaps both, if that's something you might want. But first, I'm offering an apology for creating an environment where you felt you needed to compartmentalize yourself. Olivia's expression softened, something unguarded emerging in her features. The truth is, I've been compartmentalizing long before I met you. After my parents died, I packed away the artist and became the responsible caretaker, the practical provider. Your rules just gave me permission to continue what I was already doing. And now my brother is finding his own path. And perhaps... She paused, seeming to make a decision. Reaching up, she removed the clip that secured her hair, letting it fall naturally around her shoulders. The simple gesture transformed her appearance not into the glamorous woman from the gala, but into someone authentic, present. Perhaps it's time for me to integrate all those parts of myself again. Harrison felt something shift in his chest, a wall carefully constructed over years beginning to crumble. I'd like to see your paintings sometime, he said softly. I'd like that too. She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. But Harrison, whatever changes between us, I need you to understand something important. What's that? I won't diminish my competence or my contributions to appear less threatening to anyone, including you. If we explore any kind of relationship beyond these walls, it has to be as equals. Harrison felt a surge of admiration for her clarity, her strength. I wouldn't want anything less. 2 weeks later, Reed Innovations announced a revised employee handbook. The appearance clause was replaced with a simple statement about professional presentation appropriate to one's role. More significantly, a new innovation fellowship was established. Designed to identify and develop hidden talents throughout the organization, the first recipient was announced at a company-wide meeting, Olivia Bennett, recognized for her solution to the pediatric imaging crisis. As she stood to accept the honor, Harrison watched from the side of the stage, seeing not just the assistant, who had organized his world so efficiently, but the artist whose perspective had changed his understanding of efficiency itself. The woman whose authentic self had finally broken through the surface. Later that evening, they stood together in a small art gallery in Pioneer Square, where 3 of Olivia's paintings hung in a showcase of emerging Seattle artists. Her brother had flown in for the occasion, proudly photographing his sister beside her work. You never asked why I agreed to your rules so easily, Olivia said, as they studied her largest canvas, a portrait of a young boy reading, his face illuminated with wonder. Why did you? Harrison asked, genuinely curious. Because I recognized something in you that first day, she replied. Someone who created rules and structure because they were afraid of what might happen without them. I understood that fear. She turned to face him fully. But I've learned something important, Harrison. Most beautiful things happen when we allow ourselves to be fully seen. Harrison took her hand, no longer concerned about who might notice. I'm still learning that lesson. We both are, she said, her father's watch still on her wrist, a reminder of the past that had shaped her, now accompanied by a simple bracelet Harrison had given her, symbolizing possibilities yet to unfold. As they moved through the gallery, greeting guests and discussing the artwork, Harrison reflected on how thoroughly his controlled world had been disrupted, and how much richer it had become as a result. The professional boundaries remained. Where appropriate, but they now existed alongside something more authentic. Two people discovering each other beyond the surface. Learning that true efficiency wasn't about eliminating complexity, but embracing it with clarity and purpose. And in that revelation, both had found something neither expected: the freedom to be completely themselves.